Welcome, welcome. Thank you so very much for accepting this invitation. And I want to start off first with asking you the regular pleasantries. How are you doing, and how is your family, and how have you guys been affected by COVID?
Yeah, we're doing okay. It's interesting. I took this role on, probably about 6 months before all of this craziness started, and it's my board asked me often, how am I doing? I said, outside of a global pandemic, I'm doing wonderfully, well. So it's definitely been a crazy year. All the family, thank goodness, is all safe and healthy, and in our company, everybody is safe and healthy. So we are counting our blessings daily. And candidly, we're starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's finally not another train coming at us. So I think we're finally making some progress here.
Excellent. And I like your positive outlook on it. Even though we're heading to wave number 2, you're saying that we can see the light in the tunnel. So that leads me to my next question. What do you think about COVID, how it hits? Before I get to that, let's just talk about you. COVID is everywhere. We're not going to talk about that right now. I just want to ask you, how did you get involved with the industry? How did you come to be part of the events and hospitality industry? How did you get your start?
Actually, I was one of those that was, candidly, it was by accident. It started very accidentally, and I tell people, it's interesting. I'm so encouraged with the amount of hospitality schools and curriculums that exist today for our young achievers, and it just didn't exist when I was starting in the industry. And we really didn't know this was an industry. So I literally started in this, in the hospitality and hotel world by bussing tables. When I was 15 years old, I was working at Hyatt hotels, and worked at the Hyatt on the Riverwalk, and I worked only on the weekends because Mom wouldn't let me work during the week because it was all about keeping my grades up. So I would work Saturday and Sunday. It gave me enough spending money for throughout the week, and then any of the holidays or any breaks I had, I would work those weeks. And as I got through school, I started waiting tables. Then shortly afterwards, I was supervising in a restaurant, and then was managing a restaurant. And you started to realize very quickly that this was a very large and vibrant industry, and there were some wonderful careers that were available, and it's kind of how I got stuck in it. And I started on the food and beverage side and was an operations person for about 9 years before I got into sales. And I didn't really even know what sales was. I didn't understand this part of the business at all. And especially if you start so young, you only know the operation side. You knew how to operate a restaurant. You knew how to, operate those pieces. But it was purely accidental. And, one of the things I tell people, though, I think it's important, I had 3 mentors through all of that kind of at certain times of my life handpicked me to grow me, and literally they moved my career at different stages of my life for a different reason. And I always think it's important to reflect on it. I reflect often because I think these people get thrown into our lives at different points in time, and if you can have a low enough ego and understand how little you actually know, you'll continue to learn from those individuals, and you'll take it and run with it. And there was a lot of tough love in those conversations. It wasn't all roses. It was basically them caring enough about me. And there's 2 ways people react. I look at people that get so offended today, instead of understanding, they're people that are actually trying to make me better. And if you know the intent is not malicious, then get over yourself and quit being so sensitive. And if the intent is malicious and you think they're evil individuals, that's a different story. It's not what I run across. I run across us being so damn sensitive to what people are telling us, and usually they're telling us for our own good. And we don't always want to hear it, but it's so necessary. And that's kind of how I got here. Is I've always listened to people, and I understood I don't know everything. And I say this often. I love diverse opinions. I love that people have a different conversation. You having a different opinion of me, no matter what it is, it doesn't offend me. It makes me curious. Makes me curious to learn, how did you get there? And it doesn't mean I'll agree with you, nor do I have to. It just means it makes me curious to understand your point of view and to understand how you got there. And I think we lack that in so many pieces of our society today, that we can't have real conversations. I just think that's hugely important.
Yeah, I like that answer. And that tough love made you tough enough for what we're going through in our industry today with this COVID. And my question is, you know that our industry, we all know that it's been hit extremely hard by this COVID. Can you please give us some perspective with regards to the impact of COVID on our events and hospitality industry?
You know, it's just been devastating. There's not and I'm not worried. You said this earlier, you know, you like my optimism. I'm known to be a very optimistic person, but there's no sugarcoating it. It's been devastating to our industry. And if you look at what's going on economically, you know, through the country right now, all industries are doing really well except for the service industry. We're the only industry that hasn't recovered because of what all of this means. Now, there are some positives in there. I just read a report today. This would surprise people, but October was the first month where hotels nationally actually made money.
Excellent.
So, first time. Now, they're still 95% down from last year's earnings, but we made money. And knowing that we were bleeding money for about 7 months, this is a real positive that we're starting to turn that corner. When I say there are positives there, leisure business is really strong. It's the group in the meetings and events industry and business travel that's taking some time to come back. But we are seeing meetings, and I think this would surprise people, that meetings are happening, meetings are taking place. And we've had 9 face-to-face meetings since July just at ALHI. Since then, and we're bringing in planners. We're bringing in planners to show them, how do you do meetings in this new protocol? Because there is a protocol, and the CDC has a full protocol listing, if you have not seen it, that is for events and mass gatherings. And it tells you what you should be doing, how do you do it. You have to rethink flow, you have to rethink food and beverage. The hotels have done a wonderful job of doing that, but I think that's a surprise for people. What's not coming back quickly is going to be the large gatherings. What you are seeing are some meetings that anywhere from 300 people less. We're starting to see those meetings take place, and we're starting to see that even for next year. You know, so we're starting to see some momentum in that regard, and that's not a bad thing at all. But what you're seeing is, I say this often, that you're going to have to pay attention. We're going to have 2 recoveries in our industry, and when I think about the hotel, I'm talking about hotel business specifically, but the hotel world is going to be reflective of what's going on in the overall events industry. And what you're going to see is, and we're seeing this already, the resort communities are starting to recover. Strong leisure business. They're getting some pockets of group business, and they're starting to see some momentum. Now, those areas only really depend on 2 areas of business. They depend on leisure and then group, just traditional group. The metro city areas are going to take a little longer to recover, and you're going to see their numbers drag. And unfortunately, they skew the national numbers because of their size. So you have to really pay attention to that to try to figure out what's going on. And the reason I say that is those areas depend on 5 different components of business, not just the 2. So they'll have leisure, they're going to have their smaller traditional group, but those areas depend on.
I'm a religious person that is part of a religious group that holds thousands of conventions throughout the globe, with you know, various sites.
We can seat 1,000 people. I can only have 500 people in it, and by the way, I have to have 6 feet of separation. I have to follow all protocols. Well, if I follow all protocols, I'm not even getting to 50%. So if you just told me I had to follow protocols, you take care of this. I wouldn't have the rest of this. And that's where I think it's important, but I do think other people will pick up on that. to understand that you have to separate. Germany was the first country to separate these live events versus meetings and conventions, and separating the two, because look, it's very different. It's very different to say I'm going to a Coachella Fest and you're going to try to control that, versus I'm going to a convention or an exhibit or a large meeting where I can control flow and I can completely control the attendees. So I think when we start to understand that a little bit more, and it's not quite as scary, you'll see some of the larger meetings come back next year.
Since you're talking about controlling flow in the live meetings and live conventions, and you're expecting, I'm going to quote you, Q3 2021, third quarter 2021, we could be back to conventions. My question, do you think we should have perhaps testings on site? I had an event planner on last week, and she spoke about having 75 people at a wedding, or 25 people, and she's testing from the time the people get to the parking lot. Do you think we should do more than, should we do live testing? Should it consist of more than temperatures, or is that too excessive? I don't know if you got my question, but
no, I do. Like, it's the number one question, and I think the larger the event, probably the more appropriate testing could be. But nowhere in the CDC guidelines for events and mass gatherings does it recommend, or does it say you need to test. So that's not even in the guideline. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it as an extra precaution, but I also tell people you need to understand that that doesn't solve the situation either. All it's telling you is that the moment you tested me, I don't have enough of a viral count to be able to test as a positive. And if you're going to test, here's the issue. You've got to make sure you're doing PCR testing, not antigen testing. It's not only testing, it's using the right test in the right time, in the right format. And the reason for that is the antigen testing has been shown to be problematic in its effectiveness as far as what its positivity rates are and how effective it is. PCR test, it's a molecular test. It's the most accurate out there. And the reason I say that is it doesn't take away everything else you have to do. You know the Rose Garden party that was so all over the news that it was a super spreader event? Do you know they tested everybody before the party? Do you know they tested everybody? No. And there's only one paper that even reported it. It was a Chicago newspaper. They tested everybody. They actually removed people that had tested positive. So why do you have people there without masks and sitting so close together? Because they had been tested and they thought they were safe. The point we make all the time is the testing was good. They should have still had social distancing. They still should have had people wearing masks. The testing sometimes gives you a false sense of security, just like them taking your temperature. I'm glad they're taking your temperature, but that only removes somebody who's sick. And the CDC has already reported there's 10 asymptomatic people for every one person that shows symptoms. So you got the one that was sick, but you just let 10 in that are already carrying it. It sometimes gives it this false sense of security. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. Just understand it's just one piece of a larger puzzle. I think testing will become more pervasive when it's all said and done. I think people will have, you're already seeing it, there's a health pass that they're using for international travel that says, I've been tested and I'm negative. But even that is so much of, it only has so much effect. And Hawaii is now letting you travel as long as you've had a negative test 72 hours prior to traveling without a quarantine. Now, here's my point, is like, as much as I'm glad they're doing that and I got travel back, so I take a test on Friday, I go to a wedding on Saturday that we know are a challenge when it comes to this. I then get on a plane on Monday and I'm good. And I'm going to be there for a week. I could have easily contracted it at the wedding. While I'm there, I could, without showing symptoms, now be carrying, and then I'm getting on a plane and come back home. That's where there's only so much you can do, and you still have to do all the other precautions. The only way you get completely over the hump here is when you get into the vaccine. You know, those that'll be vaccinated, you'll know that they'll know that we've got a group of people that we're good here. Then you're only doing testing for a smaller amount. But the testing, look, you know, if you're going to do testing and you're going to be on site and if you're going to be completely effective, you've got to do it every day. Look at the PGA. The PGA tests every day. Yeah. And there's golfers that test negative one day. The next morning, they're now positive and they're getting removed. There's no way around that. And that just makes it very complicated for this environment.
So in other words, just stay home, wear your mask, and wait until the CDC say get out. You can go out.
Well, I don't say stay home. I do believe the protocols work. And like, I'll give you some examples. I told you we've had meetings. We've had meetings, and there's a code of conduct that was put together by the EIC and the Task Force on COVID Recovery. The code of conduct reminds people that they have a responsibility up to 14 days to let us know if anybody has tested positive even after leaving the event. Well, I can tell you at 2 events I've been to in the last 90 days, we've had, and they were our events, we've had somebody that had tested positive. We've gone back. There has not been a single other reported case of a positive test. So why is that? Because the protocols worked. We made sure we had social distancing. We made sure we were paying attention. And, you know, everybody's talking about right now, how do you run a networking event in these areas or in this environment? I always say you don't. It's complicated. And you don't run a typical networking event. You know, we were able to do a networking event, but you know what we did is we made sure everybody was seated. They had their separation. They had preset hors d'oeuvres that would normally be passed. And you'll find that liquor is a really great incentive because we wouldn't serve you until your butt was in the chair. When you sat down, we'll give you a drink. But if you're going to be roaming, we're not giving you a drink. And there was a way to control it, and there was a way to do it and still be effective. But I must say, you don't have to wait. We've had these events. You just need to follow protocol. And you need to understand that you have a responsibility when you're traveling as well to make sure that you're not getting other people sick and you're following protocol as well.
Yeah, it's everyone. The onus is on all of us to make sure that we are responsible. And as meeting planners and events planners, we need to make sure that we also follow the CDC guidelines when we are hosting those meetings.
Well, like my son recently got married, and you know, I go to the wedding. Thank you, and I officiated his wedding. And what's really interesting is I think about we're in the chapel, and I look at everybody. Everybody's got their mask on. They're sitting down. Okay, everybody has their mask on in the area that nobody's talking. We get to the reception. Those masks are off. People are partying and drinking. And you got a bunch of 30-something-year-olds, and they're having a great time. And I'm not being critical, but I'm understanding that's a challenge in this environment today. And it's because you're feeling good, and it's because it's family and friends that because they're family and friends, they can't have COVID. Well, yes, they can.
Yes,
and that was a challenge. And we were conscious enough about it to, you know, to make sure that, you know, we went to see my parents right afterwards the next day, but we didn't let anyone get near mom and dad. They were sitting in the middle of their driveway. We were sitting in the grass at least 12 feet away from them, and everybody had their mask on. But we got to see mom and dad, and we got to have a good time catching up. Why were we so over the top protective? Because everybody was at a wedding the day before, and we knew that that reception was not following protocol. When we got to the reception, protocol did not exist anymore. And again, that's not a criticism. Like, I think people have to live life, but I think they have to be cognizant of, and I think of the younger generation specifically, it's not about them getting sick. It's about them getting grandma or grandpa sick or mom and dad sick. You know, what's been missed in all of this, and it hasn't been talked about enough, I think, is the nursing home and long-term care facilities in the U.S. represent 1% of our population. They represent 40% of all deaths from COVID-19. We have a major problem in our long-term care facilities. And this outbreak you're hearing about right now, it's the nursing homes. North Dakota, 80% of their deaths are coming from nursing homes. It's not that it's widespread throughout, it's widespread in the worst populations possible. And that is these nursing homes and long-term care facilities. Illinois right now has the worst outbreak in long-term care facilities of anywhere in the country. It's one of the reasons their numbers are so high. But there's people that are thinking, I can't go outside at all of my door because we've got this widespread. No, the problem is it's spreading in the wrong spots. And that's where I think we have a real responsibility to make sure we're protecting those people. And it's beyond me that there should be more outrage. If I gave you these stats and these were schools, we would be livid. And as a country, as a community, and by the way, it's not just the U.S. In Europe, almost 50% of their deaths came from long-term care facilities. We as a society should be livid, knowing that the most vulnerable group to this virus is 70 and over. And we know where they are. That's like knowing something was going to hit the schools. You know where they are. How do you not lock this down and protect it? And I don't mean lock them down. How do we make sure we put the right protocols in place in these nursing home and long-term care facilities? And, you know, I started to dig a little bit deeper, and it was stunning to me that we lose almost 400,000 people in those facilities annually due to bacterial infections. It's stunning to me that we really have to focus on these facilities on the other side of this. And I know that's a longer conversation or a bigger conversation than just COVID. But when I start digging, I'm always trying to figure out what are the long-term things we should focus on. That's a big one for us. And that's a big one to me specifically.
Yeah. Can you, just before you leave, I know that you've been at MGM Resorts, Lowe's Hotel, Marriott, Starwood Hotels, and for many, many years. So I know that you've had your share of luxury weddings, corporate events, probably boxing matches at MGM, you know, you name it. In the industry of events, you've seen it in the industry of hospitality. Just can you take a moment and tell us what's your favorite?
What's my favorite? You know, you say all of that, and I got to go see the Mayweather-McGregor fight, which was just crazy because it was, you know, it was UFC versus boxing, and it was just a crazy environment. I will tell you that, you know, the live events and the live entertainment in Vegas, there's nothing like it. You know, Las Vegas literally is the king of, you know, live entertainment. And I will tell you, MGM Resorts is the king of live entertainment. But I never missed Bruno Mars when I could see him. And I thought he had the most energetic show of any of the people out there. It was always so much fun. So that one to me is a biggie. And then I was there when we were able to, Microsoft moved all of their meetings into one large meeting. And we got to a point that you're planning an event for almost 40,000 people that are coming into town at one time. And the complexity of all of that was just exciting to watch all that come together. And when you talk about my favorite in the planning part of it was we had to utilize T-Mobile Arena for their general session. And you had Bruno Mars that literally was about to go on his world tour. So he was rehearsing for 2 weeks, was going to start with a concert in Vegas at MGM. And he would end that tour, by the way, back at MGM. But he was going to start and end there. So he's getting ready for this. And it was in this overlap of the setup for Microsoft. And it's like, okay, we're not kicking Bruno Mars out of, you know, T-Mobile Arena. How are you going to do this? And it was really fun because getting the production crews together, you're able to have Bruno do what he was doing. They were pre-setting for this large event. They literally lifted that set into the rafters while Bruno did his concert, cleared out Bruno, dropped it down. You lost 24 hours and you ran. And that to me is just really exciting, and it's the innovation of our industry, of understanding, here's my obstacle, how do I fix it? That to me is just fascinating to be able to do.
Excellent. You know, we're running out of time. I just want to say thank you so very much for joining. And before you leave, if you have any parting words for our industry or for anyone that is interested, any of our followers that are interested in perhaps joining the industry, they may have a wedding that they have planning or a corporate event, any parting words of encouragement, motivation for them?
Well, you know, first and foremost, I will tell you that it's, you know, we will have a better day, and it's coming, and our industry will come back strong at some point. We just don't know when and what that's all going to look like. So, you know, we carefully have to go through this. Like I think for anybody coming into our industry, it's as vibrant as it's ever been. It's challenging right now. It's going to get better. But I think it's important for everyone to understand that we all have a responsibility in this to make sure that we can actually move forward in a responsible way. And the reason for that is confidence. We have to build confidence with the people that are planning the meetings, that are making the decisions right now, that are giving the okay on business travel. Whether you're the strongest believer in it or not, the important part right now is making sure that we build confidence. And I think that's important for everybody. When you travel, what we post, if you're at an event with people, being very cognizant of what we're posting, because unfortunately camera angles and positioning sometimes will just give us the wrong message. And you'll have people that all of a sudden see people aren't paying attention. And that's really not the case from somebody who's been experiencing it. People are really taking it seriously. There is a way to do this if you're ready. And then also to know that everybody's in a different place right now. Not everybody's ready, and that's okay. I hope that we come out of this with a lot of grace, and that people have a lot less judgment and understand that some people will be ready to go, some people aren't. And that's okay. You need to let everybody live their life.
Yes. Thank you so very much, Michael. You are a man of so much wisdom, both for the hospitality industry, I mean, for the entire hospitality industry, and even more so our live events. So I want to thank you so much for your time. Thank you for graciously accepting my invitation. And thank you so very much for coming. And please give regards to your wife and your family.
I will.
Please come again.
Anytime. Thanks a bunch. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon. Thank you, Michael. Bye-bye.
Have a good one.
You too. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah.